Welcome everyone. After quite some introduction and discussion regarding levels and grids and um, how to set those up ahead of time, the importance of this project browser and making sure that the project browser is not located underneath the properties, right? So there's multiple ways. I put them side by side, but it's not acceptable to put the project browser beneath the properties. Okay, so with all that said, we are looking at on this screen a somewhat finished lesson, and what's been achieved here is as little as drawing these walls. So to prepare to draw those walls, we're going to need to set up the levels in Revit. We're going to use level 1 and level 2. Level 1 will automatically be at 0 and level 2 will automatically be at 10 feet, so that's kind of nice. And we're going to need to set up our grids, and we need to know where those grids are so we can refer back to these dimensions here when we're setting up our grids. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to come up here to File, click File New, and I want to use an architectural template. So in these templates, there are different variations, and the architectural template is the most broad. There is a construction template, a structural template, and systems template. There it is, that could be used for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. However, all of those only have specific needs for those specific projects, and everything that we're going to be doing is going to be a crossover between architectural and anything else. So we're always going to start with an architectural template, and I am creating a new project. I'll click OK, and I see this blank screen with 4 baseball home plates around here. So the first thing I'm going to do is in my project browser, I'm going to navigate to this site view, and I navigate with a double click. And notice I get some extra blue things here in the middle. So these extra blue things here in the middle, that's the origin. That's 0, 0. And by the way, this is analogous to AutoCAD, where if I draw here, I am drawing at z equals 0. Right? Level 1 is that 0 that we looked at on the finished project. The site is also at 0 elevation. Okay, so one of the things that I am kind of have a workflow that I use is to set my precision. And I set this precision way more, let's see, accurately than I'm going to need for any construction project. But what I do is, while I have my model set accurately, that gives me the opportunity to know that my model is accurate. And then I set the precision much lower when I'm dimensioning. So to do that, for step 1, I'm going to head up to Manage, go to Project Units, and I'm going to adjust the distance. So currently it says feet is the standard unit. There are 0 decimal places. So I'm going to change to feet, decimal places. I'm getting a little confused here. Oh, length is what I'm looking for. I'm interested in modeling. So feet and fractional inches, the norm for construction. And notice its default precision is a 32nd of an inch. And that is clearly more accurately than we are going to be dimensioning any project to, but I am going to take at least down to 1/64th, and commonly I model to 1/256 of an inch. If I want an inch, quite frankly, I'd want a whole inch to 1/256ths of an inch. So do I want to suppress 0 feet? Sure. And then I'll click OK, OK. And I've taken care of origin and precision. And because this is construction and we're here in the US, the units are always going to be feet and inches. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to navigate to a south elevation. And in this south elevation, it's as if I'm going to be looking straight up at this origin. So I'll double click on south, and I can see that I have level 1 at 0 and level 2 at 10 feet. That's what I'm looking for. Back to my site plan. So I can either double click here again, or there are these tabs up here above, right? So I can just click on this site tab. And this tab simply takes me back to my site view. So we're going to end up with this overall building. And in any construction design, there's a really good probability that we know how big, approximately, if not exactly, how big the building is going to be before we ever start the design. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw some lines to create an outline of just kind of about how big this building is. So I'm going to go up to annotate. I'm going to use this detail line command, and while this looks very different than AutoCAD, it's got some similarities, but we're going to stay focused on this week's work here. So I'm drawing a line, and I'm going to draw a line, and it's probably pretty hard to see, but there is a magenta icon that has just popped up, and if you looked, it said point, so I'm actually snapping to the origin. So what I'm going to do is draw a box, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make sure that my line is at 90 degrees. Right, by moving my mouse left and right, the angle automatically changes. Revit's really nice that it snaps right to exactly 90 degrees. And I am going to draw a line about 100 and, let's say 115 feet up. And notice I don't need to put any units in at all because feet is the primary unit. All right. Notice it goes way outside the home base. And now I'm going to go left, and I'm going to go left about 100 feet. And then I'm going to come back down, straight down, and notice I get this dashed line. My dashed line is indicating that it's now in line with the endpoint of the first line, and I'll come back and I'll close that. So this is about the size of the rectangular portion of the building, and then there's another kind of curved area over here that goes another 40 feet out. So I will use this modify command up here. It opens up a new toolbar, and I will use offset. Looks pretty similar to AutoCAD, and it is, but right here is where I enter the value, and I'll enter 40, press enter. I do want it to copy, and I'll click on this line. And notice before I click, my dashed blue preview is to the left. I want it to the right. In AutoCAD, we click on the line, move to the side that we want to offset, and then click a second time. Revit streamlines that a little bit. If I approach the line that I'm going to offset from the left, it will offset to the left. If I approach the line from the right, it will offset to the right. So with one click, I can make an offset in the correct direction. Okay. And so I will hit escape. And by the way, in Revit, whenever I hit escape, I always hit it 3 times. We can talk more about that later. So these baseball home plates are actually view managers relative to the east, north, south, and west elevations. So if I click on this triangle, this line represents how I will see the east elevation. And this represents how I'll see the west elevation, south elevation, and north elevation. Well, clearly, if my building is going to be around here, then these view managers are not in the right spot. So I simply select it. Notice if I now hover, I see my cursor turn into a kind of four-way motion, and I can move these so that they represent viewing everything that I'm going to need in the building, or at least for this first week. And we will end up needing to move these later repeatedly as we move through working and modeling on this entire building. Okay, so we are ready to start creating some grids. And before I do that, I am going to bring our attention down to some icons down at the bottom. And these are some control icons for our graphics area. So I have a scale, and I could change the scale if I wanted to. I have this white box, and if I click on that, it allows me to choose what resolution I want to view my model in. And we'll talk about this a lot going forward, but for this entire course, we're basically going to want to use fine resolution. So I'm going to click fine resolution, and the next cube allows me to see some different styles of view, right? And these are similar to AutoCAD shaded. There's this consistent colors, and there's this realistic. A hidden line is where we're going to be working 95% of the time. Okay, which by the way is the cube. Okay, so let's create some grids. So I'm going to come up to the Architecture tab. And on the Architecture tab on the far right, is an area that we can create some datums. We could create new levels if we were in an elevation, and we can create new grids. So I'm going to click on Create New Grid. I have some different types that I can add, and we're going to stick with this 1/4 inch bubble. And I am simply going to come down here to this kind of endpoint line, which is at y equals 0, and draw a line across past the edge of my building. And sure enough, I have a new grid. I'm going to hit escape 3 times. And let's talk about this grid now. So if I select it as an object, it shows me some grips and some icons. And for now, let's just quickly uncheck, and the 1 disappears. And if I click on the other end, the 1 appears. There is a small circle, and I'm going to drag my 1 out so that it's past the end of the building. And I have my first grid. Okay, so I can use the grid command again. However, I know that my next grid is going to be the exact same length. It's just going to be 16 feet above grid 1. And by the way, my copy command will do exactly that. So I can select this as an object. When I select an object, this modify toolbar automatically pops up. I'm going to select here, which is the copy command, And now I'm going to click a start point. All right, I just click the end of the grid. I move up, and without doing anything, I can just type 16. It automatically pulls up the distance entry box. I press enter, and by the way, notice that the next grid that came in is number 2. Revit will always increment grids by 1. So let's kind of repeat this. I'll click copy again, and I'm going to move this grid, or I should say copy this grid, up 48 feet. Enter. And copy this grid up and copy it up 16 feet as well. All right, so we have 4 grids, 1 through 4. So let's place some grids going along the top of the building that are in the Y direction. So I'm going to start by clicking starting a grid here and going up. Actually, I'm going to start it, now that I think about it, on the origin. And so I'm back up to the grid command. Make sure I get this endpoint snap, or that magenta snap, come up above the building, and notice I get a 5. Well, I don't really want a 5. Okay, what I really want is that B. Well, if I double click in to that circle, I can enter B, and now it's B. So the next grid I put in will automatically become, guess what? Well, of course, C. So I have hit escape a couple times. Now I've selected the grid, and I want to drag it down so that it is below wherever I'm going to be drawing. In other words, I want the grid to extend past the building in both directions. So I'm going to take this now and copy it, and I will copy it to the right 40 feet. And of course, there's grid C. All right. And then I'm going to take this grid B again and copy it to the left, and I'm going to copy it to the left 100 feet. And there's grid D, which of course I want to be A, so I can double click in, type A, and I now have my grids A, B, C, and 1 through 4. Okay, so grids are drawn, and this is a great time. Actually, probably it's gone a little long, but a good time to end this. And in the next sub-chapter, we will start to model on top of our levels and grids. Hope this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next sub-chapter.